Vaheguru, 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 Vaheguru,
Vaheguru Sahib Ji. Frida kale mende kapde, kala menda ves, gun hi parya main firan, lok kahen darves. Tum dariyao dana bina, मैं मछली कैसे अंत लहां, जह जह देखा तह तह तू है, तुझते निकसी फूट मरा। हमरी गणत ना गणिया काई, अपना बिरद पछाण, हाथ दे राखै कर अपने सदा सदा रंग मान। साचा साहिब सद मेहरबान, बंद पाया मेरा सतगुर पूरै, होई सरब कल्याण। जियो पाए पिंड जिन साजिया, दिता पैनन खान। अपने दास की आप पैज राखी, नानक सद कुर्बान। डंडौत बंदन अनक बार, सर्ब कला समरथ। डोलन तेरा खो प्रभु, नानक दे कर हथ। डोलन तेरा खो प्रभु, नानक दे कर हथ। वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा, वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह. So quick recap of last time. I'm going to ask you questions and you guys are going to answer questions. ठीक है? I know you got ready to write down stuff right away. So my first questions about yesterday, what the things that we spoke about. What were the three terms we used to describe everything in the makeup of the world? So there's three things that we described. What were those three terms? One is referring to the Jeev, one is referring to Ishwar, one is referring to Brahm. Okay? What were those three terms? Yeah. Anybody else? Tat, Tavang, Is. Not Ishwar. Ishwar is separate, right? Tat, Tavang and Is. Everybody else got that? Okay. And what do each of those mean? Because you have to understand that, because when we go and take each of those, one, and we open up full chapters on each one of those three terms, if you're confused at what are we talking about there, then it's going to get confusing. That's why you have to know what each of them are. ठीक है? So Tat is referring to Ishwar. So we spoke about Bimb and Pratibimb. So this is the makeup of Ishwar, which is creating the world. So when we speak about Tavang is referring to the Jeev, Roop itself. So that could be any plant or animal, any human, any of that. Then referring to Is, which is meaning Brahm, which is just Akal Purkh Paramatma Swarup. Does that make sense? So these three terms, you have to wrap your heads around before even understanding what we're going to be speaking about in the next days. So, still continuing on the recap of last week, or previous weeks, what is the form of Kalpurk? Satyachit Ananda Swarup. ठीक है? Everybody wrap their heads around that? ठीक है. And now I want to ask you guys, what is Gyan?
Knowledge, wisdom, a gift that God has given to you to use.
Okay.
When you realize you're separated from God.
Anji. It's the realization of the separation between you and Akal Purkh. When you realize the state yet that your Atma is in. Atma and Paramatma are the same thing. But understanding that the realization is that you are separated from Akal Purkh, not just knowing that, not having the gyan of it, but actually having the bigyan of it. Paroksha and Aparoksha, we spoke about these words as well. But actually understanding and realizing and being able to see that. That's called gyan. So now what were the 4 ways to help understand and make yourself realize that? 4 steps we spoke about yesterday. Yatman, Vayatarek, Vasikar, Ek Indre, Vairag. Okay, repeat those, everybody. One is Yatman, Avayataret, Vasikar, Ek Indre, Vairag. Now, what do each of those mean?
One is realizing between right and wrong, truth.
So, Yatman de arth ਇਹ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਸਹੀ ਤੇ ਝੂਠ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਿਰਣੈ ਕਰਨਾ. Realizing what is truth and realizing what is false. Sansar sara ਝੂਠ ਆ, Akal Purkh ਸੱਚ ਆ. Being able to see and differentiate between everything inside of that. That is Yatman. Now, second was Vayataret. What was that?
It's Simran continuously going in your mind.
ठीक है.
Realizing true Sangat.
हाँ जी. So realizing, having this vichar inside of your mind that ਆਪਾਂ ਸੰਗਤ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ is where is my mind standing now? What type of abhyas have I done today? What state of how am I moving forward in my journey towards the Akal Purkh? Continuously having this thought, because as soon as you forget to think that I'm on this journey to go towards the Akal Purkh, then that's where you hit a stop. So all constantly having that thought inside of your mind. And then what was the next one? Vasikar. Vasikar, we spoke about this when we spoke about Samdam Adak. Sam de arth ki si? Sam de arth si man nu vishay vikare wale pasan to rokna. So your mind is not going towards vishay vikar or vices or evil thoughts. Dam is not having your indris, meaning your body parts. So sam and dam, meaning stopping your mind and your body towards going towards what? Vishay vikar. Adak means these sort of things. And then the last one we spoke about, Ek Indre Vairag.
You're completely vairag from the world.
So once you've completely become Vairag, meaning, and also to add into the arth, it means hun man de vich eh cheez da peh ban gaya, such as, just like you know that you can't kill somebody. Why? If you go on the street, why can't you go and stab somebody? Because police will take you, you'll get to jail. So there's a fear on top of you, right? You can't steal something. Why? Because you're stealing from somebody and you know if you get caught, the police will take you and again you'll be charged. Why can't you speed while you're driving? Because the cops will pull you over and give you a ticket. So there's some sort of fear being implemented. So now this fear, instead of, because of not just a worldly fear, because there is going to be a consequence, it is you're stopping yourself because you realize in the bigger picture what the actual consequences of it are. Not in a sense just because you're going to get in trouble for it, right? The reason why we don't steal is because you're going to get in trouble. Because if the law allows you to, then you're going to do it. Now, but even if the law allows you to, you still won't do it. Because you realize what the truth and the false behind it is. And when you come to that realization, then you'll move away from that, and that is called Vairag. And what was the actual definition of Vairag that we spoke about yesterday?
Whatever is like spiritual powers, riches, love, you consider those things less than human ways.
Yeah. So Dunyavi.
Anything that doesn't come to use to you like at the end.
So anything that is riches, wealth, power, fame, money, anything that you can acquire, whether it's in this world or it's in described in Quran says Vishnupuri, Brahmpuri, Shivpuri, anything jo vi ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਆ ਸਕਦਾ, any of that, ਉਹ ਸਾਰੀ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਨੂੰ, you take all of those and you consider it to be even less than human waste. Okay, when it to you it seems like all of that is worth absolutely nothing and less than human waste, then that's a nishani of a sadhu, that virag ban gaya hai. Okay, so I'm going to add in just something else now. So when you start thinking of that concept, now you think of vivek, because that is what you would think is true wisdom. Because vivek, we've heard, or bibek, these terms, they get thrown around. But to actually understand what the word bibek means, we spoke about this before. Bib means two. ठीक है? Bib means what?
Two.
Ek means?
One.
So when you're taking from two and turning it into one, when the doubt is not becoming a doubt anymore, when it's clear and when there's one straight path. That is what bibek is. That's what true wisdom does. It takes you away from doubt and puts you towards truth. So the true artha of vivek is when you're able to now find the difference between truth and false, and you're able to come to that realization, put your mind towards that. That is what vivek is. When you have come to the realization of it now. Vivek is also meaning that. I'm going to add in one thing just to add here to your vocabulary now. It's called mamukhya. ठीक है? Mamukhya is basically meaning the inner desire for mukti. Mamukhya. We'll use that word in a bit, but just so it helps you understand this. Any questions? No? So what in your minds, what are the things that you are thinking right now, if there's a question that's arising inside of your mind based on any of these so far? If there's no question, that's not a good thing either.
I have like a big question, like you're telling us like all of this, and like I don't know, for me like I sometimes like forget it in like a week and then like get lost in the world.
So that's why you keep on repeating, you study them, and then it's not just about knowing it, you have to become it, right? So that's why this stuff is, when we're discussing it, it's about taking it and building that personal connection with it. So when we speak about a doubt, we spoke about the artha of a doubt. Param ki cheez hai, we spoke about that, and now you add it, you bring it into your life, you live in that moment, you let it, you take in those concepts. When you take in those concepts, then you'll be able to go, and once you build that personal connection with it, because aside from that is just knowledge, right? It could be any words in paper. When you take those and you build that personal connection with it, then you can bring your state of mind towards what that concept is actually saying. Then you can actually build it on. Fir oh cheez keh lo drid ho jandi hai, if you understand what I mean. Then once it's drid, meaning it's not being able, you can't separate the two. So when we speak about Naam or Gurbani or any of these things, this is how you would walk the path of Gurbani. You take the concepts, you take the Shabad and you bring it upon. And now I'm going to come to that Shabad. What is that Shabad that Var of Bhai Gurdas ji, that Pauri which you guys had to memorize? Do you guys kant ho gayi hai sari? Okay, so anybody want to take a try? Hon tis kol kamaya. Gurmat hriday. Gurmat hriday garibi aave. Par dar beno hath na lave. No, it's okay. It's holi to see kant karni hai, but the main concepts just go through the arth. So this is all coming to what? What is that concept? Sam dam adik. So keep those things in mind. Okay, sam dam adik. The keeping yourself separated from that. Now, I'm just going to add in one more thing to help understand. So, just in case somebody wasn't here for the last 6 days, the way that we're teaching the kids right now is a certain way, a concept to, once you understand one concept, that leads into the next concept. That leads into the next concept. So sometimes it gets difficult to understand, okay, where are we starting off, where are we ending off, when we don't understand the start from. So we started off, we were speaking about Karam, then we went into Vidya, then we went into all of these different other types of things. Now we're going into from the physical to the non-physical to the cause of everything, right? The cause of what's it called, this world. And so the whole point of this entire Braham Vidhiya series is to find the self-realization, right? Brahm is you, is everything. Sab te nera sab hoon te dur. Or we read in Barney, Aisa mera ram rahya parpur, is everywhere. He's each and every cell. But then coming to the realization of where do we stand, how can we move towards that prapti, or that the gaining of the Akal Purkh. Okay, so one thing that I'm gonna share now is a concept which is quite often spoken about, but we're gonna fit it into here in a bit, but just understanding the whole concept of what we call karma. So by Daya Singh, they describe this in a certain metaphor using an arrow. But before we get into that, I want to just explain it first, right? So there's 3 types of karam. The literal meaning of karam is just an action that you do. ठीक है? So you do an action. Every time you do an action, there is a reaction to that action. Does that make sense? So you do an action, and based on what you do, there's going to be a reaction. If I push someone or something, it is going to fall. It's going to break. Right? So I did an action, there was a reaction, right? And then that links on to something else. For example, because I broke, if let's say it was my mom's favorite vase, my mom's favorite sculpture at home, I pushed it off the table. Not only has it broken, but now I have to take on something, because now my mom is going to yell at me because I did that something. Do you see what I mean? So I did an action, there was a reaction based on that. But there are 3 types of karma. So that's just a very small example. I'm just going to explain them to you first, just so we can grasp our head around that. You've all heard these concepts before, right? Of karma, which you might call karma, right? So one are the karmas that you obtain, that you keep with yourself, right? It's like a kunji or a bag full of things that you keep. They're yours. It's your khajana. Does that make sense? Let's say you have 100 apples, but they're yours, right? They're not mine. You haven't eaten them yet, and you haven't given them to anybody, but they're yours and they're unused. The second type of karma is the ones that you are doing right now. Let's say you are eating an apple. The third are ones you've already done, but the reaction hasn't come back to you yet. So I'm going to share Bhai Daya Singh from the Panj Pyare. They share this example. They describe it using a bow and arrow. So on their quiver, on their back, they have a whole bunch of arrows, which they call Sanchit Karam. So that's the name of the first one. Sanchit Karam, where they have a whole bunch of arrows, but they haven't used them yet. The second type is they take that arrow and they put it on their bow, and they're about to shoot that arrow. When they're about to shoot that arrow, it's up to them, it's in their hands which way or where they shoot that arrow. They can aim it wherever they want. They can aim it at the ground, in the air, towards a person, towards a tree, towards an animal. It's up to them, right? Because it's something that they're doing right now. And the third is once they let go of that arrow, because the arrow is now in the air, but it hasn't hit wherever it's going to hit. So it's still in the air, but the person that shot the arrow, they can't stop the arrow and they can't control the arrow. But even if they once shot it, in their mind they might be like, that's not a good thing. I should not have shot that arrow. They can't change it now because they've already let go of it. It's not in their hands anymore. So these are the 3 types of karmas. Or meaning the ones which you keep, ones that are unused, the ones that go into your kunji. The second are the ones that you are actually doing in this very present moment. And the third, the ones that you have done, but you are waiting for the reaction of them. But the ones that you have done, the reaction of them comes, and if they are going to cause a reaction upon you again, or is going to cause you to do another karam, they go back into your kunji. So by Daya saying, they describe, when you shoot all your arrows towards the right target, use all your karams in the right way, eventually you run out of arrows. When you run out of karam, you have no cause left anymore. Because then you don't exist anymore. Because there is no you holding on to something. When there is no you holding on to something, when there is no arrows, then when you come to that realization, the only way you can get rid of those karmas and face everything off that truth is when you come to the realization of that truth. Does that kind of make sense? So when you find the realization that between the truth and the false, all these things that we spoke about, vairag bhi aa gaya, the vivek bhi aa gaya, you've walked that path. Obviously there's more steps in between which we're going to discuss. When you shoot those arrows and they're all connected towards that truth, then when you have no karma left anymore, then there's no even point of being back on this earth. This is where Gurbani says, Avan jana hukam te seka. Coming onto this world and going onto this world, that is hukam. That is in the law, that is in the niyam. We spoke about what hukam was. There's a hukam, Avan jana hukam te seka, but hukam hai buj samavenge, bahod hum kahe avenge. Because when you come, by understanding what that hukam is, you become one with that. Once you realize that and you have nothing, then there's no point of even coming back. Because the whole point of you coming into this, the whole cause of it is because of that little separation or that little bit of agyanta. And when there is no agyanta left, or a vidya, or whatever you want to call it, the ignorance, when that's not there anymore, then there is nothing between you and Akal Purkh. Even whilst living in this world, you could be free of all of those. So, when we speak about the Guru giving you that light and putting that light upon you and shining you your direction, telling you to aim your arrow that way and shoot your arrow that way, do these types of karmas, right? So we might think that no, we only have to do it on one aspect and just cleanse the mind, but the mind can't be cleansed without the actual physical. Because it starts from the physical, goes into the suksham, then it goes, and that depletes the karan. So remember I said all three of these are intertwined with each other, right? But the tat, tavang and east, those are separate things. Any questions on that aspect at all right now? Everybody has understood that? ठीक है? This is not getting too over the head for anybody yet? It's very simple because this is very simple stuff that we're speaking about right now. ठीक है? So now I'm going to ask this question to you. I want you to define what truth is, and I want you to define what false is for me now. Define truth and define false. False is something that changes, right? We spoke about this. False, that changes form, right? Because at one point it is true, the other point it is not. Water can turn into ice, can turn into this, or it can change form, right? Because it changes form, that form is not true, right? Because if that wall is there, I can say that wall is there. But then I can also, if the wall it can be destroyed, then it's not there anymore. It changed. That means it's not true. It's false. Age changes. The body changes. Your thoughts change. Your mind changes. Everything changes. Fashion trends change. All that. You don't have to discuss the isthul anymore, right? Anything that changes with time is false. Even time itself is false because time changes. Does that make sense? There's something called kal, which you have to understand. Kal, the actual definition for Kal is time, which I know you guys know this. So anything inside of time, or the illusion of time, is false. But everything outside of that is Akal Purakh, because Akal Purakh is Akal. Get it? Akal, he's beyond time. He's beyond death. And the only thing that is truth is Akal. But the false is anything that is false. So you have the realization is the truth and false is your body is false. But you are the truth that's inside of that. The body is Nashvant, but the Paramatma inside of you, that is truth. So connecting to the false or connecting to the truth. That's the entire game. Now outside of Maya, so we're going to be speaking about Maya as well. So in Gurbani they say everything is the form of, an illusion form of Maya. That other than Nam, other than that Paramatma, there's nothing is true. But Gurbani is also saying because the Satya, the truth created this world. That's why the truth still is prevalent inside of this. Satche ki hai kothri vich satche ka vich vas. Right? So everything is still in the truth. Everything still is. It's not that it isn't. But you can't define that it is or it isn't. That is not within our thing. That's just, this is the game. So this is described as what? Anurvachani. So that word that you have to write down as well. You have to know this word. Anurvachani. Anurvachani simply means something that cannot be told. Vachanavachani onda. Anurvachani is beyond words, cannot be described. Guru Tegh Bahadur Maharaj goes further and they describe it as a dream. Right? Got it? Okay. Now the next thing that I'm going to go to speak about Maya. Right? So Maya is also known as what? The Pratibimb. Maya is the illusion that came. I shared this example before. What was that example of the lion looking into the well? Okay, I'm going to repeat that one. A lion goes to a well and there's water inside of that well. It's looking at that well, it sees another lion in the reflection of that well. It looks at that and the ankar inside of that lion arises. When the ankar comes, it looks at that and it roars. And when it roars, that lion that's in the thing, it also roars back because it's a reflection of it. Because it's a reflection of it, it's doing the exact same thing, but the lion doesn't realize this. And it gets more and more mad. Eventually it starts trying to fight. When it starts trying to fight, it jumps into the pit, jumps into the well. And once it jumps into the well, it dies there. Because it drowns. Because of that ignorance of not realizing, this is what it is. Everything is a reflection of yourself. But when you create the delusion that it is different, then that's called param as well. That's the definition of param. But anyways, here, what the example that I'm trying to show here is Maya. So that reflection that was there, that was Maya. So the fact that that doubt was even there, that is Maya. So anything that you see, so anything that is not Akal Purakh is Maya. So anything that is not Sat or the truth, that falls under the definition of Maya. Maya does not only mean wealth. It's come to that term when somebody says, I'm Maya fadai, or pass me the Maya. That is referring to money, like cash. But the way it came to be, for that term money to be known as Maya, is because people get deluded by money. When you put money in front of somebody, you can bribe them one way or another. People will be fine. As soon as you put money, people will start fighting over it. Right? Because there's a catch, there's a pull to it. But that pull, the money is not actually, doesn't even mean anything. Because it's caused people to fight and their vikars to come and they've destroyed themselves over it, it's come to be termed as Maya as well. Right? But Maya is just anything that is not Akal Purakh. The only reason for that is because it is the doubt itself. It is the pratibimb, the reflection. So it is the reflection of the truth. But Akal Purkh is such a thing, it's inside of the pratibimb and it's inside of it is its actual form as well. ठीक है? So Akal Purkh is still everywhere. And now, to do with Maya, I'm going to share 3 terms. I know you've heard these before, Hana? But I'm just going to say them as well, just now. And there's many different definitions. And when we go into more depth of each of these 3 things, so in terms of Maya, all 3 of these things, they fall into Maya. So Maya can be categorized into 3 things. You've heard these terms before. They're called Rajo, Tamo, and Sato. Got it? So Maya is categorized into Rajo, Tamo, and Sato. So Tamo, I'm just going to go to very literal definitions, then we can go into more depth in later. But Tamo, just take the example as your thoughts to be very into Vishay Vikar, the complete opposite of Sat, or complete opposite of truth. So indulged in Vikar, so the embodiment of Vikar. Rajo would be for Raj, just you can add into Raj, or power. And Sato would be doing charitable or true actions. Which comes from the word Sat. But all these are not actually like what we call Sat, like the true Sat. Because all these are still a form of Maya. There's something which is beyond this, which is called Triya Avastha. I know you've heard these terms. We can go into definition of this after, which is called Chautha Pad, which is above all this. So above that, which we call the Brahm Swarup. Does that make sense? So Brahm Swarup, which is what we call Brahm Avastha. Where it's just Sukh, where it's just peace, that is where when you just meet the Sat Chit Ananda Swarup. Does that make sense to everybody? Sare man sa thoda beh gaya ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ. I think we don't want to go too much just right away. Just ਇੰਨਾ ਕੁ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਅੱਜ ਕਰ ਲਓ, I think. Because the reason, I mean, we could continue all night if we want to. The reason being is because I want you guys to memorize all of this. That's the only fairy fadaya. If you don't memorize it, then I can say more, but you'll forget what I said half an hour ago. Or what were those 3 things again? So these are, the reason why it just sounds like I'm saying word definition sounds like that. But when I explain something later on, this will make sense, because if you know how that definition links into this. Does that make sense? Any questions, concerns, doubts on any of this stuff we just spoke about? No? Okay, good. It's a good sign then. This is just an intro to get your interest into it. So once you're interested into this, then we can move forward with this and actually go into true Braham Vidhiya. Once, if there's interest shown, because if there's no interest, then you wouldn't tend to be speaking about that kind of stuff, because it can be taken in the wrong manner. And if there's no interest, then you would speak to something else in a way to build interest. That's why when we read in Barney, Sun Sakhi Jap Man Jap Pyar, you literally take the Guru Sikhya and you get that Pyar from the inside, and you go forward and you learn from all that kind of stuff. So the Guru, taking the Guru Sikhya and learning, we listen to Sakhi and we listen to all of these things. They're all there to build that prem, build that love inside of us, so we can start actually going forward and realizing where we actually stand in ourselves and walk that path towards the Akal Purkh. Through that prem, right? Because you keep in mind, out of all of these things, this vidya is not to be used in one way or the other way, to be used to out vidya somebody or over knowledge them, if that makes sense. It's not for rajna chahu, right? And it's not for, like, you're not supposed to be going towards the path of mukti either, because mukta na chahu, but the only thing you want to use this gyan to push that prem towards a kalpa, which is manpreet charan kamlare, which we read all the time. So I will just keep it here for today, just because we keep these concepts, just in case. I mean, majority of us probably understand it, but just in case there is one or two that might not have understood, so you guys can clarify amongst yourself or ask questions. Take it? Okay. So let's all put our hands together and say that Fateh. Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj's Fateh. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share and subscribe. Please donate and help spread Guruji's message. Link is in the description below. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.